Hey, welcome. Today we are jumping into a topic that is absolutely critical to how the global economy works, but most people have never heard of it. We're talking about transfer pricing. It's this wild intersection of corporate strategy, complex accounting, and literally trillions of dollars in taxes.
So let's just get right to the big question, the one you see in the headlines all the time. A giant global company is making a ton of money in your country, billions in sales, but when you look at their tax bill, it's tiny. How does that even happen? Well, it's not an accident, it's a very specific strategy.
And that strategy is called profit shifting. It's exactly what it sounds like, moving profits from countries with higher taxes to countries with lower taxes. And the main tool, the key that unlocks the whole thing, is transfer pricing. So what is it really? Well, simply put, a transfer price is the price for a sale that happens inside a company. So let's say a company designs a smartphone in country A and then sells it to its own marketing division in country B. The price that the marketing division pays the design division, that is the transfer price. And where you set that price, well, that changes everything.
Okay, let's look at an example. A company makes a gadget for $100 in country A, which has a nice, low 10% tax rate. Now it sells that gadget to its own sister company over in country B, which has a higher 30% tax rate. But look at the price they use, $250? By setting that internal price so high, they make it look like the costs in country B are massive, leaving only $50 of profit there. Meanwhile, a huge $150 of profit is now sitting in low-tax country A. The result? Their total tax bill is just $30. That is profit shifting.
So obviously governments aren't just going to let companies make up any price they want. To fight this, there's a global standard, a core idea that everyone has agreed on to try and keep things fair. And that big idea is called the arm's length principle. Honestly, this is the bedrock of pretty much all international tax law. It says that the price for those internal transactions has to be the same as if the two companies were total strangers negotiating in the open market. No special family deals.
And I really love this way of explaining it because it just clicks. You have to price the deal as if you were sitting across the table from a company you've never met. It's all about mimicking what would happen out in the real world.
And this chart just lays out the basic tension, right? Inside one big company, your goal is to make the entire group as profitable as possible, which usually means paying as little tax as possible overall. But two separate companies out in the world, they don't care about each other. They each want the best deal for themselves. The arm's length principle forces that internal deal to play by the rules of the external market.
So let's go back to our example. The tax authority in high-tax country B looks at the deal and says, no way, an arm's length price would have been $200, not $250, so they adjust it. And look what happens. $50 of profit gets shifted back into country B. The total tax paid now jumps from 30 up to 40, and country B gets a much fairer slice of the pie.
Now, this all makes sense, but it brings up a huge question. How in the world do you actually find that right price? I mean, it's not like you can just Google it. Well, it turns out tax authorities have a whole toolkit they can use. These are the 5 main internationally accepted methods. Now, we're not going to do a deep dive into each one, but the main takeaway is that there's a real structured process here. It's not just a guess. Each of these methods is like a different lens to look through to try and find the most reliable, defensible price.
The one that's probably the most intuitive is the Comparable Uncontrolled Price Method, or CUP. It's pretty straightforward. You just try to find a nearly identical sale that happened between two companies that are not related. Then you compare that deal to the internal one, make a few adjustments for any small differences, and there you have it, your arm's length price.
Okay, so you've got the principle, and you've got the methods for finding the price. But for decades, none of that mattered, because tax authorities were working in a black box. They just couldn't see what was happening. But that has changed big time. We're in a whole new era of transparency now.
And the thing that changed it was something called the BEPS Project, that stands for Base Erosion and Profit Shifting. It was a massive global undertaking that created a standardized set of documents that big companies now have to prepare. It's a 3-layer system. So, layer 1 is the master file. You can think of this as the global blueprint for the entire company. It gives tax authorities at high-level 30,000-foot view of what the whole group does, where it operates, and its overall pricing policies. Then, you zoom in with layer 2, the local file. This is the nitty-gritty detail for one specific country.
It's the proof. It shows all the internal transactions for that local company and provides the detailed analysis to justify why the prices they used were arm's length.
And finally, Layer 3, the country-by-country report. This thing is like a financial X-ray of the company. It's a simple report that shows for every single country they're in how much revenue they made, how much profit, how much tax they paid, and how many employees they have. It lets tax authorities spot red flags instantly, like a country with billions in profit but only 3 employees.
And this isn't some small club. This is a huge deal. More than 135 countries and jurisdictions have all committed to these new transparency rules. We're talking about a massive global consensus on how to fight profit shifting. But, with so many different countries looking at the same information, they're not always going to agree. What happens if country B says the price should be $200, but country A says, nope, we think $250 was right? You could end up with the same profit getting taxed twice. Well, there's a process for that too.
It's called the Mutual Agreement Procedure, or MAP. It's a formal process that's written into pretty much every tax treaty. It lets the government, tax experts, the competent authorities from both countries get in a room and negotiate a solution so the company doesn't get unfairly taxed twice. It's basically a diplomatic hotline for tax disputes.
So let's zoom all the way back out. After all of this, the principles, the methods, the paperwork, what is the whole point? What is this incredibly complex system trying to achieve?
At the end of the day, the single goal of all of this is to align tax with value. The idea is that a company's profits should be taxed in the same place where the real economic activity happens, where the people who design the products work, where the factories are, where the sales teams are actually creating value.
It's really this constant, ongoing effort by governments all over the world to make sure companies are paying their fair share of tax in the places where they're actually creating their wealth. It's a very technical answer to a very fundamental question of economic fairness. But of course, that leads us to the next massive question. In a world of software, data, and digital services that don't really have borders, where is value created? How do you apply these old principles to an economy that lives in the cloud? That right there is the next great challenge in the billion-dollar world of transfer pricing. Thanks so much for joining me.